The text hit me like a boarding gate slamming shut. You're not coming to Europe with us. I was zipping my suitcase by the front door, passport laid out beside the printed boarding passes, when my phone buzzed with that single message. The zipper stuttered under my hand, teeth catching on a thread, as if even my luggage understood what the words meant before I did. You're not coming with us. Us, my daughter, her husband, and, as I would soon learn, his parents. A family vacation, she called it. Family. I stared at the word until it stopped looking like English. The suitcase, the neatly folded shirts, the city maps I'd highlighted, the dog-eared restaurant lists. Everything on the entryway bench went blurry, like I'd taken off my glasses in a rainstorm. I didn't reply for a long minute. I just stood there in my travel shoes, the ones with the forgiving soles I'd bought for museum days and cobblestone nights. I'd been humming Sinatra, Come Fly With Me, of course, while I packed. The tune drained out of me. When I finally typed back, all I could manage was a single syllable that felt like swallowing a stone. Okay. I set my phone face down on the boarding passes and listened to my quiet house, as if it might argue with me. It didn't. Houses keep our secrets. They don't take sides. In the living room, the clock over the mantel ticked with polite indifference. Across the street, Mrs. Peterson's wind chimes tinkled at a breeze I couldn't feel. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a lawnmower started and stopped, the sound ragged like a cough. My suitcase slumped inward when I unzipped it. I folded the shirts back into drawers, the blue cotton I'd imagined wearing in Paris, the linen one for Rome, the sweater for a foggy morning in Amsterdam. The small toiletry bottles returned to their basket in the bathroom. The camera I'd splurged on, because I planned to take photographs that finally included me and my girl, went back to its box with the receipt tucked on top. I didn't cancel the flight right away, not because I had any hope the message was a mistake, but because pressing cancel felt like erasing a chalk drawing of us I'd carried in my head for months. By evening, I had no appetite. I made tea and stood at the kitchen window, staring at the darkening street. My reflection hovered over the glass like a ghost. I saw a man who had made himself useful for years. Useful and agreeable. A wallet with a heartbeat. The kettle clicked off behind me. I didn't pour. Habit reached for distraction. I scrolled my phone without thinking. I wasn't hunting for confirmation. I was avoiding the silence. When the first photo appeared, I almost smiled on reflex. My daughter, Lindsay, in a warm scarf and sunglasses, head tilted just so. That familiar twinkle if you didn't know how to look for the other thing in her eyes. Behind her, the Eiffel Tower, dusk turning its iron into lace. The caption, so grateful for family time in the city of light. For figures in the carousel's next photo, Lindsay, her husband, Todd, and his parents. All of them rosy-cheeked and lifted by Paris. For wine glasses. For plates of onion soup. My thumb hovered over the image as if I could swipe myself into it. The word family shone under my girl's smile like a car emblem. Polished, proud, expensive. That's when the tea went cold. I didn't write to her then. I didn't demand an explanation. I didn't type the 100 sentences that sprinted circles in my head. Instead, I set the phone down and took a long walk on a street I'd walked for 25 years, passing houses whose porches knew my name. The same stoop where Lindsay had sat at 12, tying her roller skates. The streetlight that had flickered the night before her first driving test and made her swear we lived in a haunted neighborhood. I walked and walked, and at every corner the word family turned a little and showed me a new, sharp edge. By morning, sleep had found me in brief, shallow pockets. The first thing I did was call her. It wasn't a decision so much as muscle memory. When she was little and had a bad dream, she called Dad, and I came. It felt fair to try the other direction. She answered on the second ring. Hi, Dad. Bright as a bell, as if bells don't also toll. I saw the photos, I said. I didn't know what tone to choose, so I chose none. A pause. Street sounds bled through on her end. Clinking cutlery. A scooter buzzing. Laughter that wasn't mine. Dad, we can explain. You told me it was family only. We didn't want to hurt your feelings. You succeeded. Her breath lifted, tightened. Then the steel came out. You can be overwhelming. Todd thought it would ruin the trip. He wanted this to be, easy. I didn't want stress. Overwhelming. I tasted the word like a doctor's pill I hadn't agreed to swallow. I planned this trip. I paid for the tickets. And Todd's parents are paying for their portion, she said quickly. They're not. Dad, you know what? This is making me feel guilty, and I don't want to feel guilty. Let's talk when we're home. She was going to hang up. Panic flared. Not for her, not even for me, but for what was being buried alive between us. Lindsay, I said, and the name came out more ragged than I intended. This, Dad, she cut in gently, almost kindly, as if she were moving a spider outside. Please don't make this harder. You're being needy. She ended the call. The line went flat and stayed that way. I carried the phone into my office and set it on the desk beside a framed photograph of us at her college graduation. My arm around her shoulders, her cap crooked from hugging too many people. In the picture, I looked tired and proud. The tired was from double shifts that month. The proud, well, that never left. I flipped the photo down for a second, then felt ashamed and turned it back up. I don't like hiding evidence, not even from myself. When the notification from my bank chimed, I didn't jump. I expected it to be the utility company or a streaming service. It was neither. Liberard Restaurant Paris Fr. $182.47. A minute later, St. Germain Boutique, $84.90. 2 hours after that, Hotel Mont, $1, $124. 16. The emergency card. The one I had added her to, just for a little while, Dad, when she was starting out and worried about building credit. A gesture that had become a habit, that had become an assumption. They were eating and sleeping and shopping on my dime in a city I wasn't invited to. I didn't rage. The anger didn't come up like a flame or even a slow warming. What came was a clarifying cold. You can be angry in a fog. You can't act in one. I opened my banking app, went to Authorized Users, and tapped her name. A friendly warning appeared. Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. I pressed yes. The phone vibrated with the completed task. I sat very still and listened, to myself, to the air, to the way a house shifts when someone finally closes a door. An hour later she called. The phone lit with Lindsay and a photo of her from a summer we both miss. I answered. What did you do? She demanded, voice tight and brittle. The card got declined in front of everyone. The waiter came back 3 times. Todd's parents. God, it was humiliating. That must have been embarrassing, I said, and the calmness in my voice surprised me. You can't do that to me. I did, though. She pulled in a breath so sharp I could hear the edges. You're not thinking clearly. I've never thought more clearly. Fine, she snapped. If you want to play stubborn, we can play stubborn. Todd and I have been talking, and when we get back, we're going to look into care. You're alone, Dad. You're clearly not managing. We'll sell the house and find a place that. You'll sell my house. I repeated, almost curious. It's amazing what people will say when they think they still have the upper hand. For your own good, she said. You don't need all that space. You'll thank us. I thanked her then, not for the threat, but for making the line so bright I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. Have a good trip, I said, and disconnected. I didn't go for a walk. I didn't make tea. I didn't stare at the photos again. I opened my file cabinet and pulled out a manila folder labeled Maple Street. The paper clipped to the front was creased from being folded and unfolded over the last 2 years. The deed to the house I had purchased for Lindsay and Todd when their financing fell through, and the bank smiled an apologetic no. We had told ourselves we'd transfer the title in a few months. A few months had turned into whenever we get around to it. Life got busy. People got comfortable. Paperwork stayed where it was. My name was the only one on that deed. I called my realtor, Marcus Chun, a man who knew the value of quiet. Morning, Marcus. Gary, he said, surprised but warm. How's retirement? I need to sell Maple Street. There was a small silence on his end. I liked Marcus because he didn't stuff small silences with big words. All right, he said. You want to come by the office? I'll be there in 20 minutes. We did the paperwork the way Marcus always did things, efficiently and without drama. He clicked through comps, circled a number with a felt-tip pen, lifted his eyebrows at me with a question. I nodded. He scheduled photos, called his stager, made notes about showing windows. You'll want to pick a storage company, he added. If they're living there, we can't show with personal items. They're out of the country, I said. Easier then, he replied. You have keys. Front door, garage, and the alarm code. Good. If we price it right, you'll have a line out the door. We did price it right. In a market that eats houses before the yard signs cool, Marcus's listing was a fresh steak. While he worked his side of the plan, I worked mine. I called a moving company. Dave's Honest Moving. A baritone said, the kind of voice that comes from lifting the world for other people. Dave, speaking. I need a whole house moved into storage. Tomorrow morning. The residents are away. Keys. Yes. Truck, 2 men, 8 a.m. You'll be on site? I will. Good. Cash or card? Cash. See you then. Then I called Secure Storage out on Brady Street and paid for a 10 by 20 unit 1 month in advance and asked about climate control for a few boxes I knew would hold delicate things. Unit 47B, the manager said. Gate code on your email. We'll have someone there at 11 to do the paperwork when the truck rolls in. After those calls, I dialed another number I had put off for too long. Law office of Ana Ruiz. Her assistant answered. It's Gary Owens. Is Ana in? She's with a client. Can I tell her it's about an update to my will? I paused. And please add immediate to that sentence. Ana called back inside the hour. You all right, Gary? I am. I'll be more so after I sign a few things. Come in at 4. Bring your current will, any beneficiary forms, and your list of charitable organizations. You knew I was going to say that last part? I know my clients when they're brave and mad, she said, and I laughed for the first time that day. I slept better that night than the one before. Not because I'd solved anything big. I hadn't. But because I'd remembered I had hands I could use and a spine I could straighten. If grief is water, resolve is ice. It doesn't feel warm, but it gives you something to stand on. At 7:40 the next morning, I stood on the Maple Street porch and unlocked a door that had cost me more than money. I turned off the alarm, pocketed my phone, and looked around. I allowed no sentimentality to take root. The couch wasn't a couch. It was a large item to be wrapped. The framed print of a city skyline wasn't their taste. It was glass, handled with care. The nursery they had painted a soft green a year ago when they were dreaming about someday wasn't a broken promise. It was a room with boxes, neat and labeled. I kept myself to labels, and the rest got easier. Dave and his crew rolled up at 7:58. He shook my hand like a man who had been up since 5. You Mr. Owens? I am. I always like when the owner's the one on site, he said, eyeing the house. Makes for fewer phone calls and more decisions. You got a list, or we take it wall to wall? Wall to wall, I said. Everything in this house goes to storage. You bet. He glanced at me, not prying but measuring. Family. Once, I said. He nodded like a man who had packed that word in a box before and carried it to a unit with a good lock. We moved quickly. They wrapped and taped and dollied like a choreography they'd rehearsed all their lives. I made piles, donate, keep with me, storage, and when I wavered I put it in storage. You can always give away a thing later. It's harder to drag it back out of a donation bin. In the bedroom, I found a shoe box under the bed full of old letters. Some were mine. Notes I'd written Lindsay when she was in college, slip-thin papers telling her to eat, to sleep, to call her mom. Some were hers, birthday cards, Father's Day, I love you, Dad in purple gel pen. I sat on the edge of the stripped mattress and read 3 of them, then put the whole box in a container I labeled in thick, black marker. Lindsay, memories. I taped the lid as if sealing a wound after the bleeding stopped. Boss? One of Dave's guys called from the office. What about the files? Those go, I said, stepping in. Then I saw the file cabinet drawer half open, folders stamped paid in my handwriting. The education loan I'd cleared when Todd was between jobs. The credit card balance they had sworn was a misunderstanding. The hospital bill. The veterinarian bill for the dog they had adopted and then rehomed because it chewed on the furniture. I closed the drawer gently, took a breath, and said, those go too. We broke for water at 10, leaning against the truck in the shade. Dave handed me a bottle without looking at me too closely. You want us to patch holes and spackle? He asked. Or is someone coming in after? Realtor has a stager. She'll do what she needs. Ah, he said, and didn't say the other thing, which was, this isn't your first rodeo with getting a place sale ready, is it? By 11:30, Unit 47B on Brady Street had swallowed a life whole. I signed the storage contract, clicked photographs of the stacked boxes for my records, and slid the big steel door down with a heavy, satisfying clatter. I locked it with a padlock that looked like it could bite. Back at my kitchen table, I ate a sandwich that tasted like nothing and checked my phone out of habit. A dozen notifications, and not a one I was interested in, until Lindsay's name appeared on the screen again. I let it ring twice. "You humiliated us," she said without hello. "We couldn't pay for brunch in Paris, Dad. Todd's parents had to cover it. They're furious with you." "I'm not in Paris," I said. "That isn't my problem." "Oh, but it is. It always is. You created this dynamic." "I created this dynamic," I repeated, tasting each word so I wouldn't choke on them. "I agree." She went quiet. Confusion, for a second, is just silence looking for a word. "So fix it," she said finally. "Restore the card." "No. We'll see you in court, then," she snapped. "For power of attorney. For your own good." "That's funny," I said, not smiling. "I have an appointment with my attorney at 4. I'll let her know to expect your call." "You're impossible," she said. "Mom would be ashamed of you." I almost said something soft then. Almost walked it all back to keep the peace with a person who had no interest in peace unless she could own the terms. "We're done for now," I said instead. "I'll remember this," she warned. "I'm counting on it." At 4 o'clock, I handed Anna my current will, my list of charities, and the story in the short version. Her office smelled like lemon oil and sharp paper. "I'd like to establish a charitable trust in my wife's memory," I told her. "Scholarships, a literacy fund at the library, the food pantry, things my wife valued, and things I have neglected while shoveling money into a hole." "We can do that," she said, and her pen began to write. "And your daughter? She's not a beneficiary." "Not now." Anna didn't flinch. "Understood. We'll draft language that makes contesting unattractive. We'll also update your medical directives and designate someone you trust to make decisions if you can't." "Not Lindsay," I said. "Noted." We signed a stack of documents that grew into a tower. 2 witnesses put their names where instructed. A notary stamped the paper like the end of a court scene in a movie where the hero gets to keep his ranch. When I left, the wind off the river was cool and tasted like rain. I stood on the sidewalk for a minute and watched a boy buy an ice cream cone with $2 bills and a handful of change. His father ruffled his hair, and the boy tried to dodge it, but not really. "Dad." He laughed, and my throat closed up. Then it opened again. The listing went live the next morning at 9. At 10, I had 2 showing requests. By noon, Marcus texted, "Offer, cash." I sat down at my desk and let the news sink in like a warm bath. I read every word, every number, every clause. "Ask the buyers if they'll do a quick close," I wrote back. "I'll vacate." "Done," Marcus pinged. 2 days later, I signed the closing documents at the title company. The wire hit my account before I got back to my car. Numbers arrived and settled like birds on a wire. For years, I had watched my balances fly off into someone else's weather. Watching them land felt like a change in climate. They came home on a Saturday. I went, of course. Not to gloat. Not to wave the deed like a flag. I went because some scenes may be inevitable, but you still get to choose how to play your part. I parked across the street from Maple and watched a compact moving truck back neatly into the driveway. The buyers, a young couple named Michael and Sarah with a baby whose cheeks could fix a war, stood on the porch, conferring with a man in a polo shirt who explained something about an appliance warranty. The taxi stopped at the curb. Out came the luggage first, glossy as a showroom window. Then Lindsay, hair pulled back, sunglasses hiding eyes I used to know how to read. Then Todd, a tight smile already forming as he counted what he believed was his. Then Todd's parents, who looked around like inspectors. Lindsay saw the moving truck and frowned. Then she saw strangers on the porch and slowed. Then she saw me, and the frown traveled down her face and turned her mouth into a hard line. She crossed the street with those big airport steps you learn from a lifetime of rushing. "What's going on?" she demanded, no greeting, no hug. "Why are these people here?" "They live here," I said. Her laugh was a short, disbelieving burst. "This is our house." Michael stepped down from the porch with a contractor's stack of papers. He was polite, but not a doormat. "We closed yesterday. We have the deed." Todd took the stack from him and riffled through it as if rights could be undone by rough handling. "This is ridiculous. We'll have this reversed." "It can't be reversed," I said gently. "You never transferred the title to your name. It was my property. I sold it." "You can't just sell our home," Lindsay said, and if the sentence had been a balloon it would have popped on the last word. "I didn't," I said. "I sold mine. Where are our things?" Todd snapped, working himself toward big volume. "In storage. Secure storage on Brady. Unit 47B. 1 month paid in full. I took an envelope from my pocket and held it out. He didn't take it, so I tucked it into his luggage handle like a hotel bill. You had no right, Lindsay said, and the words shook. You had no right, I said, steady, to exclude me from a trip I paid for and then charge those expenses to my card. You had no right to threaten to sell my house like it was a broken bicycle you were done with. You had no right to call my love neediness and then wield it like a weapon. Todd's parents had stayed on the curb, watching like people at a tennis match who aren't sure who they're rooting for. Now Todd's mother cleared her throat. This feels family, she said to her son, as if suggesting they move the argument indoors. It is family, I said, looking at my daughter. That's the problem. We'll sue, Todd spat. You already did, I told him. And you lost. The judge ruled. The title was mine. The sale stands. You're welcome to sue again if you enjoy paying attorneys. Lindsay's rage cracked, and someone underneath it looked briefly like my girl at 12 who'd lost her favorite bracelet. Where do we go? She asked, small for the first time. Tonight? Where do we sleep? You have friends, I said. You have a storage unit. You have each other. Figure it out. That's cruel, she whispered. It's honest, I said. Michael lifted his hand in a gentle wave. We're going to start bringing things in, he said to no one in particular. We have a baby. We'd like to get him down for a nap. Sarah gave my daughter the softest look, the kind you offer a stranger whose life just broke in front of you, and there's nothing you can do about it that won't make it worse. She reached for the door, then paused and met my eyes. Sir, she said quietly, your landscaping is beautiful. Thank the gardeners, I said. They did all the work. I left first. It seemed kinder that way. In my rearview mirror, I saw Lindsay standing on the sidewalk with a French suitcase and no plan. I saw Todd arguing with a lock he couldn't pick. I saw a young couple carry a baby through a door and close it. Life, as always, makes room for itself where it can. They filed another suit. Of course they did. Entitlement is a busy lawyer. It went nowhere. The Superior Court judge used words like owner of record and lawful conveyance, but the sentence that mattered found me in the last paragraph. There is no evidence of fraud or undue influence. The plaintiff's claim is dismissed with prejudice. My attorney slid the decision across the table with a small, satisfied the sound some people make after tasting soup done exactly right. The town chose its gossip. Some said I was ruthless. Some said I should have done it sooner. Most said nothing to me at all, which was fine by me. You learn quickly whose lives have room for your story and whose don't. At the hardware store, men I'd known for decades clapped my shoulder harder than necessary and said things like, heard about Maple, in a tone that held both apology and congratulations. At the grocery store, one of Lindsay's high school teachers looked as if she wanted to hug me, then didn't, then slipped a jar of my favorite pickles into my cart when I wasn't looking and later pretended the cashier had rung them up wrong. Pay me next time, she said, and I did, even though I didn't owe her a penny. When the papers were done and the ash settled, I went to the shelter and met a golden retriever named Max who had been abandoned because his family was moving and couldn't take him. He scrambled into my lap as if I were a hill and he were 9 months old again. He smelled faintly of cedar chips and hope. He's 3, the shelter worker said. Great with people. Loves car rides. Bit anxious at first. I signed whatever they put in front of me and bought one of everything at the pet store like a grandfather in a toy aisle. The first night, Max slept on the floor beside my bed with one paw resting lightly against the frame, like he didn't trust the bed not to leave without him. In the morning, we sat on the back steps and watched the neighborhood wake up. The mail truck clattering, a jogger passing with neon shoes, Mrs. Peterson watering her peonies with more attention than some people give to their children. Max bumped his head gently against my knee. I scratched his ears and told him the truth. You're safe now. A week later, I bought a small travel trailer, 25 feet of Silver Promise, and learned how to back it into my driveway without taking out a mailbox. The salesman tried to sell me something bigger, something with more bells and buttons, but I have learned that bells and buttons niggle at you. Freedom is a simple floor plan and a good hitch. I took the trailer to the RV park by the river twice to practice hookups, watched 2 YouTube videos about maintenance, then sat at my kitchen table with a paper map and traced a route with my index finger. West to the plains, farther west to the mountains, then south where the air tastes like pine and orange at the same time. On the morning we left, I taped a note to my front door for my neighbor who had promised to watch the place. Margaret was written on the heading of the stationery because I still use the paper my wife bought at a boutique she loved. It has tiny blue flowers along the border, and the first time I pulled a sheet off the pad, I almost put it back. Mail on hold, I wrote. Trash set out. Sprinklers on the Tuesday schedule. Help yourself to tomatoes if they ripen before we're back. I signed it G and M and Max, because grief is elastic and I can stretch it across that sort of joke now. We drove out of Davenport as the sun came up behind us, making the rearview mirror a small, generous fire. Interstate. Tulane. Small towns whose names you only learn if you stop to buy gas. In Nebraska, a man in a seed cap knelt to scratch Max's head at a rest stop and told me about the dog he'd loved so much he'd build a wooden box for his ashes and kept it in the truck like the friend was still riding shotgun. People are weird about loving animals, he said, and I said, people are weird about loving people. In Colorado, we camped beside a lake so clean the mountains seemed to have a second life turned upside down in it. I cooked over a small flame, and Max ate his dinner like it had been prepared by a celebrity chef. We walked at dusk until the path disappeared and the air got cold enough to tighten the skin on my forearms. I took pictures I will never post because some things belong to you alone or they don't belong at all. At a diner off I-70, a waitress named June with a beehive that had survived 6 decades of fashion poured me coffee until I stopped her with a hand over the cup. You look lighter, she said as if she had seen me before. I feel like I put down a piano, I told her. Folks don't realize you can just do that, she said, leaning on the counter. They drag it up and down all their stairs until their knees give out, and then they get mad at their knees. Where do you want your piano? I asked. In a barn, she said without hesitation, and then she winked and topped me off. I missed Lindsay. Not the woman who weaponized the word needy, not the strategist who wielded legal threats like measuring cups, but the girl who stuck her hand through my arm in grocery store aisles and asked if we could buy the good cereal just this once. Dad, please. I allowed myself to miss that girl for exactly 5 minutes a day. I set a timer. When the timer went off, I took a breath and patted Max and reminded myself I was not the man who had to buy his way back into anyone's grace. It would be a better story if I told you she called me from a pay phone one afternoon on the edge of tears and apologized without condition. It would be satisfying to say Todd apologized too, and they wanted to make amends and give back half of what they'd taken. But life's third acts don't obey our edits. They did call, later, when the rent came due and the storage facility sent a bill and their friends' couches sprouted out-of-order signs. The first call was fury. I let it go to voicemail. The second was need. I let it ring out. The third was quieter. Can we talk? She asked, and I said, yes. And then I did what men who love their daughters do. I told the truth in sentences she could not mistake. You are not my beneficiary, I said. That is not punishment. It is protection. You are not on my accounts. You are not on my deed. I will not fund your marriage. I will not be coerced into a care facility so you can liquidate my life for the down payment on yours. I have set up a trust in your mother's name that will do more good than any of us have done separately. If your circumstances become dire, Real dire, not Starbucks cold latte dire, you can call me. We'll talk. And if you get a job and a plan and a budget and some humility, we can eat together. At my table. In my house. And we will leave money off the menu. You don't love me, she said, because that's where people go when the request fails. I do, I said. Enough to stop giving you the things that make you worse. She hung up. We didn't talk for a while after that. Time is a good dog. It sits when you ask, it stays when you need it to, and eventually it trots back with the stick you threw and lays it at your feet like a gift. When she called again, she told me she had a job at a call center and was embarrassed to say it out loud. I told her I was proud of anyone who shows up when the job isn't glamorous. She said she was going to get her own credit card. I said I'd help her read the fine print. We were careful with each other, like a second date after a bad first marriage. On a bright October afternoon, months after the house on Maple had learned a different family's laughter, I pulled the trailer into my driveway, unhitched with the clumsy grace of a man who has done something enough times to get it done and not enough to be smug. I made a pot of coffee. I sat on the back step with Max and watched leaves drift across the grass like notes falling off a song. My phone buzzed against my thigh. Hi, Dad, the text said. I made soup. Do you want some? I smiled at the words until my cheeks hurt. Yes, I wrote. Come by. Bring bowls. Then, because I am myself and I have learned to be clear, I added, and bring your own spoon. She arrived with a pot and paper bowls and 2 spoons from a drawer I recognized because I'd bought them. We ate at the kitchen island the way we had before she learned the word needy. She did not ask for money. I did not offer it. We talked about small things and the way people practice before they move on to big ones. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "That trust in Mom's name. Tell me more sometime." "I will," I said. After she pulled away, I looked at the picture of my wife on the refrigerator, the one with blue flowers around the border where we write grocery lists. We did okay, I told her, and the kitchen didn't disagree. I won't pretend I became a saint or a monk. I still winced when a bill came and wondered what it would have been like to pay for a shared trip and come home to post pictures none of us had to lie about. I still reached for my phone to text Lindsay pictures of sunsets that looked painted, then put the phone down and scratched Max's head instead. Growth isn't a straight line. It's a trail with roots and rocks, and places you have to step carefully or sit down a while and drink water and say, "We'll try again tomorrow." When I drive past Maple Street these days, I slow down, not to haunt myself, but to count the chalk drawings on the sidewalk and the bicycles in the shade. Sometimes Sarah is on the porch, nursing the baby who isn't a baby anymore. Sometimes Michael waves with the hand that's still holding a screwdriver. Once, on a Saturday in spring, they invited me up for lemonade. I stood where my daughter had stood that day and watched different people be family in a house that I had thought would be ours and wasn't. It didn't hurt. It felt right. The world is full of rooms that become what they're supposed to be only after we leave them. The last time Lindsay tried to talk about vacations, we didn't talk about Europe. "Maybe someday," she said, and I didn't ask what she meant by we. I told her about a campground by a lake where the morning smells like coffee and pine, where loons call to each other as if they're making sure no one's lost. "You and Todd could come up for a night," I said, surprising both of us. "There's a cabin you can rent. I'll be in the trailer with a dog who thinks he owns the shoreline." "Would Todd's parents be invited?" she asked, and there was mischief in it, not malice. "They can come if they bring their own spoons," I said. She laughed, for real, and then she reached down and gave Max a scratch that made his back leg thump against the floor like a short drum solo. "Hi, buddy," she said to him, and then she looked at me. "Hi, Dad. If you're waiting for the part where everything ties itself into a bow, you'll be waiting with me. Bows are for presents. Life is something you unwrap one layer at a time, surprised at what you bought yourself years ago. But I can tell you this. I don't have a suitcase by the front door anymore, waiting for permission to be invited into my own life. I have a map pinned to the wall and a trailer I can hitch in 20 minutes. I have a dog who will go anywhere I go and a kitchen that smells like lemons and coffee. I have a bank account that funds kindness and scholarships and the library's summer reading program instead of luxury selfies. And I have a daughter who is learning the difference between need and love at the same pace I am. Sometimes we meet at the kitchen island with paper bowls and metal spoons. Sometimes we don't. Both things can be true and still be good. The text that once felt like a boarding gate slamming shut turned out to be something else entirely. It was the steward pointing toward a different flight. The destination wasn't Paris. It was peace.